Hello everyone and welcome back to SwitchUp. Now on today's episode of All Patched Up, we've got some really good games to revisit. Things like the Touryst, Daemon x Machina has had that fabled patch to add a certain something. Cyberpunk 2077 had a big update that we haven't discussed. And Hitman has also released another patch. So let's have a little look, see if there have been any improvements there. As I say, if you enjoy this type of video, do let me know down in the comments. You probably don't believe it, but I genuinely make my way through probably 95% of them. And if you see a heart, you basically know that I've definitely read it. So, what games have been all patched up? Well, my name's Mark Walker. Welcome back to SwitchUp. Now let's find out. Let's kick off with Hitman World of Assassination then. If you remember in the last episode, we actually revisited it as our first game. We're now on to version 1.0.5, but what did they add last time? Well, in 1.0.4, they added in a 30 frames per second mode. Although I say mode, it seemed a bit inconsistent sometimes because if you were playing in handheld, you might find that it would automatically switch back to 60 in certain scenarios. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out exactly what was going on. I looked for a toggle, but on my setup, I couldn't see it. But then I knew that they'd said there was one, so it was a bit unusual. Anyway, when we jump over to 1.0.5, it's a lot better in the sense that that toggle is very clearly in the camera settings in the menu. You can change it to capped, which is capped to 30, or uncapped, and you can do that in both modes. So if you'd rather just the uncapped experience in some of those levels where performance can get a little higher, then it's a lot easier to do so. One area that they did need to improve were the reflective qualities on certain surfaces where performance would drop down, so I thought I'd go back to the same location and see if that had improved. Well, as I'm sure you can tell, not only has my gameplay not improved and my abilities, but also the quality and the frame rate has not improved in that area. It still drops down significantly, but I think I managed to find almost the anomaly within the game because across the board it just runs and looks so much better than it did at launch. For those people who are upset about the inconsistent frame rates, you now have a very easy toggle so you can go backwards and forwards. One area I did not speak about last time though is that if you are someone that prefers performance, you can actually lower your console's resolution to 720p and you'll have much higher frames across the board. So if you just want the performance, there is a way to do it. Just the trade-off there is obviously a more blurry image. I also mentioned in that last episode that the lighting quality had slightly changed, and that was actually related to the level of brightness within dark areas. They did, in fact, tweak that. I wasn't sure at the time, but then I looked and added it as like an on-screen overlay. So overall, they're going in the right direction with Hitman. I know some people are quite worried, aren't they, about the new 007 game, but I really don't think they need to be. You've got to remember that Hitman wasn't made for Switch 2. They didn't have the dev kits when Hitman 2 or the Hitman World of Assassination was originally made. They have those in hand now. So as they're building, I should imagine they'll be building in things that work well for the architecture. I really do. I just don't see it being an IP where it's a shocker. I wouldn't expect 60. I don't expect it. 30 frames per second. That'll be fine as long as the image quality is there. And I have moderate hopes for it. I know a lot of people don't, but I do. This is where we flash forward and everyone says that aged badly. So that's Hitman with its latest 1.0.5 patch. Now Daemon x Machina, Titanic, Scion, that got ripped to pieces by me at launch, even though I could fully see that it was a really good game. So gameplay-wise, great. Performance-wise, not great, and controls-wise also not good at all. Now the developer came out with a statement, didn't he? Do you remember last month, or whenever the last episode was, probably a couple of weeks, basically saying, yeah, we address some of the issues and we will address these. He didn't mention performance at all, which was a little bit worrying. He's just put out a new statement that says, to all players of Daemon x Machina Titanic Scion, the next update will introduce a new feature related to appearance changes through fusion. Nah, don't care. We're introducing the ability to turn off appearance changes due to mutations, calls through fusion. Again, if you don't know, the fusion system is basically an interesting way of upgrading your character, but it can have these permanent visual mutations, and it sounds like they're making it so that you can toggle that, which kind of defeats the point, because I thought it was quite cool, it was like that risk and reward. You could literally turn yourself into a monster. But their reasoning is that you can now enjoy their DLC costumes. Ay caramba. Then he goes on to talk about a mission that they're adding that I don't care about. The core one here is the game system improvements and bug fixes, and the ability to essentially repeat missions after they've been finished, ones that become unavailable. So yeah, that's okay, I can handle that. Once again, he does not really talk about the things that people, I guess maybe it's just the division between regions, you know. I think people primarily over here would really like the performance to be fixed. So yeah. They have released version 1.1.0, and it does a lot that he hasn't spoken about. The main thing for me are the gyroscopic controls. You can now toggle gyro. Why do I care so much about gyro? Well, there are certain titles where you have weapons that are manually aimed. Things like Monster Hunter, when you're using your bow. Without gyroscope, it would be awful. Like, really not good. And this is from someone that's played Monster Hunter for the longest of times when you didn't have that. And now that you do, going back just doesn't feel good. Here, gyroscope makes it so much better for manually aiming your long-range weapons. It's just more enjoyable because you can strafe enemies whilst using your right hand on the joycon to target. It's a really nice implementation. It's also nice to see that that's available on Switch 2 and PS5. So you can use your PS5 controller over there to do the same thing. A smaller tweak that some of you may not have realized is that they've actually separated the horizontal and vertical sensitivity settings. Unreal Engine can be a bit wonky with its sensitivities when you're using X and Y in conjunction, so you can tweak that now so it feels much better, as well as the acceleration and inertia, other settings that can make things feel really janky where they don't need to. So you can tweak that and make it the way that you want it to. The models when loading into cutscenes have been tweaked as well so that they actually load in. Sometimes it had that classic Unreal Engine delay, so you'd see the textures and everything streaming very slowly. I would say some of that is still there, but it's definitely better than it was before. They fixed some issues with bugs relating to music, so the game music would sometimes stop altogether, and that has been fixed, and a bunch of others that you can go and have a look at. But overall, I am pleased with the introduction of the gyro. It does make a big difference. How about performance? I'm honestly not seeing huge improvements, although there does seem to be, perhaps, and it's always difficult because you're looking at two things side by side and it can feel a little like confirmation bias at times, but potentially slightly sharper. Let's have a look at them side by side and you can decide yourself. Regardless though, the actual frame rates and performance seem mostly unchanged. When you're in combat, it's one of those where you won't really notice. Like, there's a bit of shake here, there's 30 frames per second, it's okay. It's just when you're speeding across the world where you see those drops and they remain present. It does frustrate me a little that the developers don't seem to acknowledge it to us. I don't know whether, again, that's a cultural thing where it's admitting that it's a problem. I mean, we look at Nintendo and how they've done with their games. They just don't talk about it. Or if they do, they don't actually address it after having discussed it. So nice to be moving in the right direction. Great to have gyroscopic control. Really nice to have those more nuanced camera tweaking options. So yeah, there are some improvements here. Then a game that I have absolutely loved. When it came out on Switch 1, it was just a revelation. It's the Touryst, which was released from the same team that did Fast Fusion and Fast RMX, Shinen Multimedia. Completely left field from what they'd bought before, but my goodness is it a delight. You're basically a little tourist, you arrive on an island, and then you get given the task to go around and take photos and investigate these different shrines. It's got really nice environmental puzzles, a little bit of a feeling of Untitled Goose Game to it, where it has that experimental nature. You know, you pick up a pineapple, you throw it at a tree, the tree knocks down a coin, you take the coin, you go and help someone build up a party by reconnecting all of their lights, fixing their sound system, and then they reward you and you just keep flowing to the next area. Now, originally performance was alright on Switch 1, but we have a completely overhauled Switch 2 update that I think costs about £4, but the update is so good because it adds so much. Firstly, the very obvious, the 4K, the 60 frames per second. Performance is like the smoothest of butter. It is fantastic. It's funny how some games just benefit from that performance increase in terms of the gameplay and the enjoyment, and this is one of them. It is just great. My kid was watching me play, just smiling and laughing, and I was like, yeah, that is how this is making me feel. Now, performance is 4K 60 in TV mode. It's 1080p 60 in handheld, so it's fully native now across the board. And I also saw someone complaining about the price for the update. I really don't think that £4.50 or your regional equivalent for something that adds new gameplay content is at all bad, especially from a company like Scion, who initially charged low prices for their games anyway. So as well as the performance, we now have a new arcade game. I'm not going to spoil that because I feel like, yeah, you really do risk, I don't know, affecting the enjoyment of people watching your videos if you show everything that they're going to experience. It just takes a lot of the joy out of it, you know. The graphics have seen an overhaul as well. It isn't just a bump in resolution. The quality of the lighting is definitely improved. There are new items, there's new quests. It's the absolute best way to play the game. So if you've played it before and you thought, oh, I really enjoyed that, I wish there was a sequel, which is something I did, it feels like a new experience going back and playing it now. And for a few quid, I'm happy to pay it, to be honest. That is a game that is perfectly patched up. Alright, let's go to Cyberpunk 2077, the Ultimate Edition, which is now on version 2.3.1. At launch, CD Projekt Red impressed everyone, didn't they? Or most people. There's always that one guy. The game had both a performance and a quality mode. You could target frame rate or you could target visual quality with a locked frame rate. It had gyro, it had a million other options, cross-platform saves. It was a great way of playing it, there's no doubt. But it's not finished yet, and they mentioned that the Switch 2 version is going to join the other platforms in parity. They will be updating them across the board, so that's really nice. With patch 2.31, we got the auto drive improvements. So cars now drive smoothly. So they added in 2.3 essentially an auto drive functionality. Tesla eat your heart out, but it used to mess up. It go a bit wonky, it might stop in the wrong places. They've fixed that in this patch. They can roam freely around the city as well. Performance-wise, things are much the same. You've got your performance mode and your standard. It looks pretty good across the board, although they have fixed a few NVIDIA bugs and other things related to that. And there are some new UI toggles. So there's a toggle to disable vignette. I know some people don't enjoy that, the way it darkens at the edges of the screen. There's been quite a bit of work done on lip syncing. Another small detail that maybe you'd never notice, but it now fits the language much more consistently than it did before. There are a few visual glitches that have been fixed, some flickering that was there, some problems with lighting. A solid effort, and just nice to be getting the same patches and improvements that other systems are seeing around about the same time. It seems only fitting to end with the absolute GOAT, and it's No Man's Sky. I saw a few comments saying I'm still waiting for the Voyagers update, and I was like, it'll be 2 weeks, standard 2 weeks, and I think it was a little bit longer, and maybe it was a little longer because of the amount of work that's been done here. Now, as we know, No Man's Sky has been improving across generations of Switch platforms since it came out, running well on Switch 1 and then better on Switch 2. But now with Voyager, we see a bunch of new stuff added in as well. We get the Corvette class starships, so you can spawn those in, you can fully customize the interiors. There are multiple rooms, modules. It's ridiculous the amount of stuff they've added there. Multiplayer's seen some big boosts as well, things like group invites, shared missions. Yes, there are crash fixes. I mean, if you've played any No Man's Sky experience, you know, if you've played it ever, you will know the game crashes. There are ways of making it crash just because it's so big in scope. So we have seen a number of fixes there. You've got the toggles as well, so you can toggle between a performance mode that targets high frame rates, that's actually quite smooth, and the traditional locked mode where it'll go at 30 frames per second, but it gives you what seems to be a slightly improved visual. So let's just have a look at those two things, and it gives you a good idea of what to expect when playing. So that is it. I think overall, a really good episode there. It's nice to see so many developers really stepping up when it comes to trying to meet the same needs on Switch 2 as you'd get on any other current gen platform. Hopefully you find these useful. Let me know in the comments other games that you would like to see revisited. I've got, again, probably about 3 or 4 or 5 already actually captured, ready to go. So we'll see what the next episode brings. If you enjoyed the content, let me know. Click all the bells and buttons and all that nonsense, and I will see you on the next one. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya.